I need to record Mr. Atik.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much coming here to listen my, I think, little bit new ideas, and I will try my best to tell you the story simply. So don't lose your patience. I am Shah Muhammad ATIQUL. I am doing a PhD in City University of Hong Kong, and I've already submitted my thesis. I'm looking forward to have my oral defense. Maybe after going back, I'm going to have my oral defense. 11th September is already scheduled. So what's my topic I'm going to talk to you? It's flowers, sun preference, and family size. What's the link? Anything come to your mind? How there is link? There is some link I'm going to tell you. So what's the key message I want to tell you? People living in vulnerable areas, they prefer to have more sons to tackle and to handle the impacts of floods. Simply, what's the implication? If they prefer to have more sons, that may lead to high fertility in vulnerable areas. What was my research objective? That I tried to explore how the impacts of flood influence people fertility preference, especially son preference in vulnerable areas. Here, my study location is Sharadpur, it's Sunamganj. Here is highly affected area for flooding. Almost every year they face impacts of flood. That's why I chose the area as one of the flood affected areas in Bangladesh. So I did a field study. I actually surveyed and I had in-depth interview as well. Here, we already know why it's important issue for Bangladesh. Bangladesh is highly vulnerable country in the world, actually, to climate change. Bangladesh is actually facing different extreme weather events like floods, cyclones, drought, especially floods and cyclones. Why is happening? Why is a concern? It already is a concern. Why? Because if there is 1 meter sea level rise, almost 1/3 of the people living in country, they are going to suffer. There are many problems coming to your people to solve. Another is glaciers melting. Bangladesh is close to the Himalayas. The ice is melting. It's increasing. So if ice is melting, Bangladesh is going to suffer. The people living in vulnerable area, they are also going to face the impacts of flooding. Another important issue, that many people actually die due to the impacts of cyclones. Last 2-3 years back, there are people died. It's called CEDAR. They are affected. Their livelihoods are actually affected. There are so many people actually died. So I did my research. One of the affected areas, vulnerable areas, actually, they face flooding. But there are areas in Bangladesh going to face the red area. It's called Chittagong. This is a coastal area. The people live there. Most of them are poor and vulnerable. If climate change is an issue, there is a possibility to have the extreme events, floods and cyclones. So we should focus the extreme events and its relation to fertility. Okay, here you can see the picture. What happens if there is extreme events, floods? People lose their land, their livelihoods going to be actually difficult to have their subsistence, continue the subsistence to food. Here you see the one man, what's going to tell here? Summer flash floods has destroyed rice crops and fish catches has declined. So it's going to affect the natural resources. They are actually depend on it, like fish and also the rice crops. Bangladesh is agriculture society. Most of the people depend on the rice cropping. So if they don't have food, what will happen? There is another picture here you can see what happens if there is extreme events. People, they need to shift from their home to another place. This is another obstacle to them during the flood periods. And here you see their houses is damaged. They need to rebuild their houses. They need to rebuild their damages. They need to have some sources of income or earning sources that can recover their damages. So you see here, what's the women is telling? We feel vulnerable and angry. We want to stay at home, but we can't. Here I'm going to tell you some two quotations from my in-depth interview. Why people in vulnerable area, they prefer to have more sons. I'm going to tell you, if we have more sons, we don't need to borrow money with high interest from businessmen or NGOs, and we will not face so many repayment problems. I think I should talk a bit more about it. When I did the study in my area, the people living in this area, they told me that during the flooding period, they need to borrow money from the businessmen, sometimes from NGOs. So when they ask money from them, they okay, we can give you money, but with high interest. You have to give with installments, and you have to pay more, also with high interest. So they think that they have the pressure to repay the loan to the businessmen or NGOs. So they think that if they have more sons, they can go out, they can work, they will be able to work, they can help them to repay the loan, because they feel that sons as security, future security during the crisis period. One thing we know that in developing countries, people feel having sons as security in old age, but I'm going to tell you they also feel having sons security during the extreme events, floods. It's going to be a very important issue in our country. Another quotations I'm going to tell, sons can handle any difficult situation since they are physically able to work hard and are able to tackle crisis. I think here there is some sort of gender issues involved there, but I'm not going to cover the gender issue. But people perceive that the son they can do hard work, they can earn money. Girls, they cannot go out, they stay actually home. They're not able to earn more money, especially in rural areas, in vulnerable areas. So they think that if they have more sons, they can earn more money, they can support their families. There is one issue also we want to talk. You know that Bangladesh is a very successful case for fertility decline in the world. 30, 40 years back, we had fertility rate above 6. Now it's 2.1 or 2.2. But there is one issue we need to focus at micro level, local level. What? If you look here, I did the field study in the village. I found that per couple they have about 4 children. So if you think that national level is 2.1, but in urban areas, rural areas, vulnerable areas is it's about 4 per couple. Another issue, still we need to focus, though contraceptive prevalence rate is increasing. Maybe it's in urban areas it's increasing, it's effective, also the total outcome of the number, including the rural areas. But if you go to the particularly, this place, we can see that it's issue, because 62% people, they never use contraception. And 71%, when I was doing my field work, they told they're not using contraception. It's also an issue we need to focus on. So, in a nutshell, I'm going to tell you what are the main reasons I found from my study for son preference. One is handle difficulties. They have to shift from their place to another place. Another, the son can earn more money. They can help to rebuild their houses and damages, and especially assist repaying loans. So what are the policy implications? If people have this preference, this perception to have more sons due to the impacts of floods, what will happen? It's going to impact on the fertility, the trend of declining fertility rate or population growth in our country. maybe in any other country. So we should focus on it. What are my recommendations? As there are actually people from NGOs representing here and working in my country, population dynamics and climate change. So I would like to tell you, when you work in the field level, you can focus on this issue and also to motivate the vulnerable people not to about the benefits of small family size, and they can be more aware about the impacts of climate change. And also it helps them to perceive that, okay, having more sons, they prefer during the crisis period, but it's better also not to have more sons, and also they can understand benefits of a small family size. And one important thing during the crisis, people feel that they perceive that sons are the only security, only actually assisting their family by earning money, repaying loans. So government or NGOs, they should focus on this issue, and government should also take steps to support, especially during the crisis, by providing food, health, other issues through the NGOs. So again, I want to remind you that people living in the vulnerable area, they prefer to have more sons to tackle the impacts of flood. So if they have this perception, it may lead to high fertility in Bangladesh, maybe in any other places vulnerable to other extreme events. Thank you very much, and any comments and questions are welcome. I think you have many questions you want to explore. What's the link? So please feel free to ask. Okay, sure.
Your study is quite refreshing and it's interesting. Can you tell us more about how the preference for son actually leads to having more and more children other than what is probably adequate? Or yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for your questions. One thing, our country is by actually so many studies is proved that highly vulnerable to climate change. Bangladesh is going to face extreme events. They are going to face almost every year, the people living in this area. And if they have this perception to have more children, to tackle or to handle the difficulties during the crisis periods, also even after the flood, what will happen? They think that having more sons is security. So next year they are going to face another extreme event, and again they have already more sons or more children. Next year, if they have same difficulties, same problems, they can, okay, if you have more children, it would be more, actually, because psychologically they think that we are going to face, so if you have more children, more sons, they are going to help me to tackle this situation. So it might be like vicious cycle, we can tell, if we don't focus on have any intervention in this period for Bangladesh.
So if a woman, for example, previously desired to have 6 children, just because she prefers to have a good number of sons, if she has six daughters, she still wants to have more, just because she wants sons?
Yes. Okay. Your question is okay. You know that the family planning workers are working in that area. Okay, that's fine. Their desire to sons, culturally, in developing countries, in Bangladesh, the people prefer to have more sons, especially in rural areas. But why the impacts of flooding or extreme events is going to be one of the indicators that's influencing them to prefer high fertility, to prefer more sons, to their security. One more thing, when I did my study, the sex ratio, there is no actual abortion, like sex-selective abortion I did not find. Naturally, if they have daughter, and if they're going to face the flood and extreme events, they think that, okay, go for another reproduction. If especially God give one more son, it will be good. It will be future security. They can repay the loan or handle the damages. Got my point?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sure. Abiba.
Okay. Minister?
Yeah, Minister, I will go the next level to Minister. Now I am talking to NGOs workers.
You are right. In my department, I'm responsible for preparing the people for the disasters that may take place in their localities. Now you're telling me to go back to these people and tell them message about having small families, this and that. And yet you have said here that they consider having more children and have a special son makes sense a lot to them because it is the sons who helps with moving the goods, carrying maybe other young children. That's my presumption. But then now you're telling me I'm totally a climate change expert, and all I know is to think of how to prepare these people when disaster strikes. How should we take them and move them to a safer place? If I go now with a message to say, please use contraceptives, have little children, don't you think that is going to be a hindrance on part of my work? How are people going to take my information?
Okay, thank you very much. When I did my field study, one of the respondents told me that, okay, I'm very lucky that the God actually gave me a son. I asked the respondent, why? Because you see, that just after 6 months, 3 months, we are going to have face floods. So my son can, they're old, help them to bring the actually safe place, can go actually far. It's a very rural, remote area to have food and also to have medicine. So they think this way. So one thing another, I would like to actually just use one trigger, kill two birds. It is already established that we need to reduce fertility rates in developing countries. Another way, I just want to add this issue, the impacts of extreme floods. In future, it might be one of the indicators influencing people to prefer more sons if you don't focus. So if we bring these two things together, go to that area, convince them people how to actually handle, how to adapt the disasters, after the disasters, and also use contraception. Please use contraception, make actually them raise awareness, and that would be fine.
But I think it's going to be hard to convince my boss on that one.
It would be really difficult because it's not established.
Yeah, we can work together later.
Of course, you're welcome. Yes, please.
So in Bangladesh, we actually have a very successful NGO named BRAC, which have you ever thought about maybe using some examples from BRAC about how daughters and women can be a positive resource for families?
Yes, I got your point. Thank you very much. You are talking from the Grameen Bank, BRAC, women empowerment from this issue. But they usually have the study area and they do the experiment in MATLAB. It's very known name last 20, 30, 40 years in our literature review. It's good, they're doing fine. But there are many areas in our country, very remote areas, very vulnerable areas. They have different socio-cultural, they have different perception influencing them, and they are not going to have the health facilities, no schooling, no more teachers, actually not that enough family planning workers. We should focus also in this area. So that's why I am actually talking here. The vulnerable areas, the cyclones, those people live in coastal area or flood areas, very remote areas. If you study there at micro level, local level, we can find the real fact why they are preferring have more sons, because they are vulnerable. If we don't focus on them, you know that if there is floods, if there is cyclones, people are going to die. If there is more people, there are going to people. I would like to ask you just one question, if we have dying one person, I think it's not, if there is more people, if they die due to the extreme floods or impacts of floods, I think it's not good. It's better to actually reduce and giving them support during the crisis period, if you can control. Okay, everything is going fine. There are more people living there, having actually the extreme events and floods. People are dying. It's humanity issue. So before going to the stage, if we can support them, the vulnerable people, and they can think, okay, we have the confidence in the governmental NGOs, they support us. What we can do, we can reduce the fertility, their fertility preference, the tendency, but also we can save life. Thank you.
Last question.
Sure. Yeah, Alan.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation and for enlightening us about the possibilities of improving and encouraging these families to have to use contraceptives. You've also talked about the fact that these areas are prone to floods. I'm wondering, you said from the organizations, maybe I have close links with some minister, and I'm wondering, is it possible for us maybe to relocate these people to other safe places so that we don't have, because you say that because of the climate change, we are going to have these floods continuously. Do you think it would be maybe one of the suggestions where we can have these people not staying, near those, risky places?
Exactly. Thank you very much for your questions. I think to answer your question, we need to talk actually to developed countries, those who have more space. In developing countries, it's really difficult to replace the people. It needs lots of money, lots of infrastructure development. Where you are going to replace them, the place they are going to, what they are going to do. That's why you see the urban slums, their life is going to be actually like more severe. They are not going to have the good livelihoods, good food, good education, good living place. One thing, the place they are living, the time, and the place they are going to destination. One thing, when you select your destination, you have in your mind that the place I am going is better than the place I am there. So when the people, if they have networks, one of the relatives went to actually migrate to urban areas or some places, they get the message. No, they think that, okay, whatever happens is the wish of God. We live our own place. What happens, that happens. But we people, we don't want to actually that any people die due to this reason. As much we can give them food, support, and save lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.